Hello. For the week 6 case study, I chose to do the Benjamin v. State case from chapter 2.3. Before I get into the case, just a little bit of terminology from chapter 2 that the case is going to talk about. Tort law. Tort law is determining when losses from an injury should be shifted from the person who was injured to the individual or organization that caused that victim's injury. Civil wrong suffered by one person as the result of intentional or unintentional conduct. For this case, specifically for the Benjamin v. State case, this case explains unintentional tort in a college setting involving negligence. So a little bit about the case. The parties involved, the plaintiffs were Thomas Benjamin and his father Richard Benjamin. The defendants was the State University of New York. Some facts about the case: on November 16th, 1979, Thomas was struck and injured by a hockey puck during his attendance to a hockey game. He attended a doubleheader hockey game at the Romney Arena, which is a state facility on the campus of the State University of New York. The structure of the arena, it's an oblong-shaped rink, kind of like a normal rink, that runs lengthwise from north to south with goals on the north end and on the south end. It's enclosed by a dasher board that was approximately 3.5 feet high. Player benches were along each sideline on the east side of the rink, and then there was also elevated spectator area with bleachers surrounding the rink. So in front of each of the players' benches on the east side of the rink, there was approximately 20 feet where there's no protective fencing except for the dasher board that was about 3.5 feet high. And so that area is essentially open. And then there's 3 feet to 6 feet protective fencing that's placed along the back side of each goal and along the sidelines. However, this fencing is not continuous around the entire rink. So Thomas, he was with his brother and some friends. They attended a doubleheader hockey game at the Romney Arena. They paid to get in, and they sat in the bleachers behind the south goal. And after the first game, Thomas, his brother, and his friends decided that they were going to visit the concession stand. After visiting the concession stand, they decided that they wanted to watch the remainder of the hockey game from the sidelines. So they found open seats in about the second or third row of the bleachers on the sidelines. They were behind protective fencing, and that was about 10 to 15 north of the nearest player's bench. At that time that they were sitting in the row of bleachers, Thomas was hit by a puck. The puck found its way through the open area in front of the player's bench and passed behind the protective fencing and struck Thomas on the left side of the forehead. So the plaintiff's arguments in this case was that the state facility failed to provide adequate protection for the safety of spectators seated in its arena. So, wherever Thomas was sitting in the south goal where his original seats were, or in the bleachers, Thomas and his father felt that the state facility failed to provide protection for Thomas's safety. The Romney Arena undertook precautions to provide spectators with protective seating along the sidelines. The state had a duty to ensure that the seating along the sidelines was safe for its intended purpose. So if there were bleachers there, that area should have been safe for spectators to sit. Thomas and his father were seeking compensation for the injuries caused. After he was hit by a puck, he felt numbness in his body and he had nauseated symptoms. A little after he was hit by a puck later that night, he got even more sick, where he went and sought out medical attention, where they took an x-ray of the skull, and the x-ray revealed that Thomas had a fracture to his skull. They did a surgical procedure and removed and replaced some bony fragments to his skull. And then following days after, Thomas spent weeks in bed, and he wasn't allowed to go to school. When he was allowed to go back to school, he had to wear a protective helmet, especially like in gym class. And then as weeks and months went on, Thomas still had pain and headaches and difficulty with his balance for almost a year. So Thomas had every right to believe every reasonable care had been taken for his safety when he participated in that game and when he took his seat in the protected area on the sidelines. The defendant's arguments in this case is that the state is only under a duty to exercise reasonable care under the circumstances to prevent injuries to those who come to watch games at Romney Arena. The state felt that the due care required it only to provide protective seating behind the goal where the danger was the greatest and not everywhere around the arena. Thomas should have remained in his purchased and protective seat, which was behind the goal. They argued that Thomas assumed the risk of being hit by a puck when he moved from his original seat on the near the south goal to the bleacher seating by the players' benches. So in this case, the court findings were the absence of a fence in front of the players' bench constituted a dangerous condition that presented a foreseeable risk of injury to spectators. And the court also found that the failure of the state to provide for the safety of Thomas in the protected seating area constituted negligence. Overall, the court finds that Thomas had been damaged in the sum of $24,000, and an award is made accordingly. So after reading this case, some implications for athletic or activity administrators is it's really important to kind of have a risk management committee, whether that's with other athletic administrators, other school board officials, state officials, local officials, but having a committee when cases like this happen that can kind of debrief and assess over the situation of how can we make improvements, what can we look at to improve to make our facility safer. It's also important to have yearly state and local inspections of facilities, and not only to make sure that these are being done, but also documented to make sure that the facility is being inspected yearly. Also, you never can plan for the unknown because you're obviously not going to know when and how it happened, but you can always organize and try to plan and do your best of if something like this case would happen, to try and think outside the box, and that can go back to the risk management committee as far as like what could happen at this facility, what are some risks that could occur at this facility, and organizing and planning for those. But like I said, you can't plan for the unknowns all the time, and just always be looking at ways to improve facilities. It's important to have documentation of incidents and accidents. So if you are having reoccurring incidents and accidents in a specific area of your facility, you can get with your risk management committee and you can get together and see that someone is injured at this part of the facility. So what do we need to do to improve this facility to make it safer for others and to make it a safe facility? It's always important to remember that no matter the facility, no matter the people walking in, the patrons, members, the guests, the athletes, safety comes first to everybody.